Hello, welcome back to ESPN's Football Forecast with myself, Hugh Wilson-Croft, and my good friend James Olcott. Looking ahead to midweek games, a very busy week across European football, but we're going to start in the Premier League because it's the Merseyside Derby, and these two sides couldn't be in more contrasting form. Everton hosting Liverpool. Liverpool have been fantastic, but there is real pressure on the Everton boss, Rafa Benitez. Only one win in their last 10 games in all competitions, 7 defeats in there as well. What's going wrong for Rafa Benitez, James? How much pressure do you think he's under?
I think he's under huge pressure right now because ultimately Everton fans didn't want him at the start. There's two junctures you can go down here. You can go logical, understand the CV, understand Rafa Benitez as a man, and go, look, he's a good manager. This is a club that's spent too much money, has now got to be careful, and therefore the personnel's not as strong. And so you just need someone who's a steady hand. Or you could go, he's just not one of our guys. This is a guy who took Liverpool to the Champions League, and it's a little bit embarrassing for them to have him anyway. And it's very difficult because you hear Everton fans talking about Duncan Ferguson, bring him in. No one is saying that Duncan Ferguson is a better manager than Rafa Benitez, but I think it runs deeper than that. I think it's about how Everton fans feel right now. Add that to the fact that they've got a few injuries, which doesn't help. Huge injuries as well when you think of Richarlison not being available and Dominic Calvert-Lewin not being available. And then you add the fact that he's just not one of their guys. And I think sooner or later, this will have to come to an end because I think this whole club needs to be energized. That comes from a change in the squad, but they're never going to give their heart to him. It's never going to happen. And with the run of games that they've got coming up, it's looking really, really bleak. Starting, of course, with this Merseyside Derby. I mean, you're only as good as your last Premier League game against that team, I like to always say. And they did win that one 2-0. Prior to that, the record's not as good. No. But the biggest problem, I think, is just how good Liverpool are right now. Look, Rafa Benitez is a great manager, and you think that he should stick around. Is that right? I think it's doomed to fail.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting you use the term doomed to fail. I basically think the Everton fans, unfortunately for them, I'm not blaming them for this, but their expectation now needs to change. Because of FFP and the money that they've spent badly over the past few seasons on a lot of failed signings, Everton now can't spend the money that they were hoping to enable to push themselves up into that top 8, top 6 picture. As you can see with the signings this summer, Salomon Rondon, you've got Damari Gray for 1.7 million, Andros Townsend on a free transfer. They are not going to be competing with the biggest teams in the Premier League in terms of the transfer market. They tried, they went for it, and now it seems that the new stadium, which looks like it will be incredible, is going to take over completely. So I think it's time that they basically have to settle a little bit in terms of what they were hoping to achieve with Rafa Benitez as boss. The reason I think he should stay is because he's an extremely experienced hand. He deals well with the pressure and criticism. He gets on with his job. It doesn't really ever seem to affect him. He's a professional. And I think for the next few seasons, it could be really hard for Everton. They're getting the best possible team out that they can. They've got some good players in that squad. But as you can see, as soon as that first 11's injured and some of their first choice players are out, they are not the same side whatsoever.
But Hugh, then don't you need the fans? Don't you need the fans then to be that 12th man to get you over the line at times? This is my problem, because I think at the start of the season, I would have been with the same train of thought as yourself.
You do.
But the problem is that when it's not going well, and you're right, if you think of the second layer of your team now in the Premier League, when it's as competitive and there's as much money and the players are as good as they are, when you've got Rondon, Iwobi was playing up front at the weekend. I mean, Damari Gray was on the bench for that game. I think he's a good player. Andros Townsend is a solid Premier League player. But you're right. It's not a team that's aligned with the expectations of Everton in terms of the history of their club. And so you need to be energized. The club needs to be energized. And I also think from a higher point of view, that Moshiri's getting involved far too much. Marcel Brands needs to create, you look at it, Ralph Rangnick, and the fact that he's going to bring clarity to Man United. The same needs to happen at Everton right now, because you've had Marco Silva, then you've had big Sam Allardyce, or maybe the other way around. Then you have Ronald Koeman because he's the flavour of the month. Then you've got a Hollywood manager and Ancelotti. I don't blame any of these appointments, but it's not very clear. There's not a sort of certain personnel. You then bring in Rafa Benitez. That needs to get sorted out very, very quickly, because from that point, you can then move forward. But I just can't see it working out with Rafa, especially with the games coming up. The games coming up include Liverpool, Arsenal, Crystal Palace, who, show up a mirror to them, I think. Chelsea, Leicester, and then you got Burnley and Newcastle after that, which would be huge, huge games because at the moment they are sleepwalking to a relegation battle. Let's move on to Liverpool then a little bit. They're purring. I mean, it seems like this is always the case when it gets to a Merseyside derby that Everton go into this horrible run of form and Liverpool are flying. They really, really are flying, aren't they?
They are, and this is the sort of thing that could change the tide actually for Rafa Benitez because, as you mentioned, they weren't overly enamoured by him coming to Goodison Park, but losing a derby against Liverpool badly at home could really, those people that were sort of in that middle ground, I don't know, give them a chance. It could really change them to being Rafa out. So it's a big, big game for Everton in that regard. I think for Liverpool, they're getting towards fifth and sixth gear. They have that interchange up front. That's brilliant. They play with a level of intensity that's absolutely right for the Premier League. They've got quality. They've been scoring incredible goals. Everyone's happy. And you just think that they're going to go into this. You can't see any other result than Liverpool winning. Now, we've been criticised of late, James. We've got to hold our hands up and admit it. I've made some predictions that haven't gone the way I would have hoped.
So I thought you'd done better than me, so that's not good.
Yeah, I think I probably have. But I just didn't want to call you out. But the reality is, I sit here and as I say, I can't see any other result, but you never know. We saw at Stamford Bridge at the weekend, these sides with their backs against the walls in an important game, maybe they can make something happen if they put in, a determined, dogged fight. But it will have to be something like that. I mean, I looked at Salomon Rondon's movement the other day. You're not going to get the best out of Virgil van Dijk playing like that. You look at the quality that they had on the ball, from wide areas. Yes, it was great. They were getting the ball in. No one was there to put the ball in the back of the net. They probably should have scored against Brentford. But you think about the ability to cross the ball in against Liverpool when the wing backs are so good, when the wingers work so hard. That isn't going to be an avenue that really works for Everton, I don't think, in this game. And so they're going to have a better plan in terms of playing through Liverpool. And you don't really play through Liverpool. They're an exceptionally good side. You look at the spine of the team. It will be a very tough, maybe even chastening evening for Everton. Let's be honest, they've had them before, so they'll be maybe used to it. But I think the reality is right now, they want to be coming into this game and believing that they can hurt Liverpool, and they're just not there right now. For me, it'll be a win to 0. For Liverpool, probably 2-0. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool scored at least twice in each of their last 17 games. Everton scored 3 and 6, I want to say. 4-0. I see this being another 4-0. I think it's going to be a bit of a massacre and, maybe want to skip if you're an Everton fan.
Hi, I'm Hugh Wisencroft from ESPN's Football Forecast. Make sure you're subscribed. You can follow all of our predictions throughout the season and get some other great analysis from our big names as well.